In a cottage outside Savannah, Georgia, during the Revolutionary War, David George waited to die. To him, aged about 37, the question was not whether his life neared its end, but rather who or what would kill him. George had escaped plantation slavery, Native American captivity, and plantation slavery again, but he had little hope of escaping the dreary hut that served as his sickbed and hiding place in October 1779. Smallpox was the most likely candidate to take George's life. He lay ill with the dreaded disease, one of many victims of an epidemic raging during the war. British soldiers sent to crush the rebellion had carried the plague to North America, and the pestilence spread around British-occupied Savannah in the aftermath of a recent French and American siege of the town. "Not long after the siege was raised, I caught the smallpox," George later recalled, "and thought I should have died." The disease killed a third of the people it infected, so such fears were well-founded. But there were other imminent threats to George's life. If smallpox did not kill him soon, soldiers who called themselves patriots might. During the war, George was one of thousands of enslaved people to seize a British offer of refuge to slaves or indentured servants who fled from rebel masters. After a daring flight to reach British forces, George had secured emancipation through this policy, but it was a contingent freedom. It applied only in British territory, and revolutionary forces advanced rapidly on Savannah and the house where David George trembled, sweated, and suffered with pox and fever. Colonial Americans had a long tradition of dealing harshly with fugitives from slavery, whipping, branding, crippling, or cutting off toes, and the flight of enslaved people during wartime only increased colonists' fear and ire. Revolutionary forces often killed the formerly enslaved among British forces they captured. So, if smallpox did not kill him, George had good reason to think the patriots, whom George preferred to call anti-loyalists, would end his life. To diminish his prospects further, George was alone, with no one to nurse him, prepare food, or fetch water. If grand events, pandemic, war and revolution, fights over slavery, did not kill David George, something more mundane might: starvation or dehydration. When he ran away to the British, George traveled with a wife, 2 children, and other members of the congregation he led as one of America's first black Baptist preachers. All were gone now. When the Americans were coming toward the hut where he lay ill, George recalled that, "I wished my wife to escape and to take care of herself and of the children and let me die there." Too sick to travel, George sought to ensure that at least his family avoided recapture by revolutionary forces. That would mean re-enslavement at best, a brutal death at worst. Believing David would die anyway, the family honored his wishes with the heartbreaking decision to flee. They left him with simple food and the makings of a fire. "I had about 2 quarts of Indian corn, which I boiled," he remembered, "but even that did not last. I ate a little, and a dog..."